All right, we got a couple things here that might scare us. First of all, the question itself says we need to weaken the hypothesis, right? Most of these say that we need to strengthen or support the hypothesis. Now we're weakening it. That's a little different, a little harder. Plus, we can just tell from that italics there that we've got some sort of science passage that scares people off. But let's see. Don't approach it with fear, right? I mean, it might not be that bad. So let's just see what we get. A student performs an experiment testing her hypothesis that a slightly acidic soil environment is more beneficial for the growth of the plant, a vegetable commonly known as choy sum, than a neutral soil environment. So right there, I got hypothesis and a whole bunch of things. So this is also weird because normally the hypothesis is at the end, right? It's usually the last sentence where they're like, the researcher claimed, the hypothesis was, so it's odd that it's right away. So I'm going to make a note of it right away. Basically, acidic better than neutral, right? So notice how mathy my thing is. I'm using an inequality symbol to do that. She plants 16 seeds of choy sum in a mixture of equal amounts of coffee grounds, which are highly acidic. So coffee is better than no coffee, probably. And potting soil, and there's another 16 seeds in potting soil without coffee grounds as the control for the experiment. So coffee better than no coffee. The two groups of seeds were exposed to the same growing conditions and monitored for 3 weeks. So if I need to weaken the hypothesis, what do you think it's going to be? This is the benefit of doing these kind of mathematical up and down kind of summaries, is that now it's easy to reverse it. So let's take this, since it's about coffee, and flip it. So what I want to say here is that coffee is worse than the no coffee, right? Or at least that they're equal, right? I want to show that coffee is not better than no coffee. That's at least it. So let's see what we get. A, the choy sum plant in the soil without coffee grounds were significantly taller at the end of the experiment than the choy sum plant in the mixture of soil and coffee grounds. Okay, so without coffee is taller than with coffee, right? So this comes to be saying that, yeah, coffee is worse than no coffee. Seems to be right. Let's look at the others, though. B, the choy sum grown in the soil without coffee grounds weighed significantly less. So no coffee is, if it weighs less, that's worse, right? So weighs less at the end of the experiment than the choy sum grown in the mixture of soil and coffee. So this seems to be saying coffee is better than the no coffee, right? If it weighs less, it's a scrawny little plant. So notice, though, that would have been the right answer if we misread the question and we're trying to support the conclusion rather than weaken it. So this is why it's important to keep track of that stuff. C, the choy sum plant seeds planted in the soil without coffee grounds sprouted significantly later in the experiment than did the seeds planted in the mixture of soil and coffee grounds. So again, this is saying coffee, which would have been earlier, is better than the no coffee. Now look, I'm not a botanist. I don't really know about plants and what makes them good or bad. But I think these are cases where you just need to be comfortable using your common sense. If it sprouts later, does that sound good or bad? That sounds bad, right? They don't say it in the passage, but like it sounds like it's slow, it's delayed, right? I mean, that sounds worse. So it sounds like the no coffee one is worse off than the coffee one. They don't explicitly say that, but like you got to have a little trust here sometimes in yourself and recognize that there isn't some weird trick where you have to know a specific fact about choy sum plants or coffee or growth rates or whatever. If it matters, it's in the passage. And if it doesn't matter, just the most obvious conclusion is the one that you should assume. So here, yes, probably worse to grow later than to grow sooner. D, significantly fewer of the choy sum seeds planted in the soil without coffee. So, okay, that sounds bad. Sprouted plants, then did the seeds planted in the mixture of coffee and soil. So that sounds like, okay, there's less of the no coffee one. So again, the coffee is greater. So literally all of these choices are examples of the coffee being better. And we, because of the weakening, want the coffee to be worse. So hopefully, if you misread the question or trying to support the conclusion, you would realize after you've gotten through B and C and D that you're like, oh, wait a minute, these all kind of say the same thing. Maybe I misread the question. Only A says the opposite. But, some of you will just, because you're lazy and skipping steps in the first place, you won't read the question. And then you'll get to B. You'll see that it supports what you were supposed to, what the hypothesis was. And you'll just pick it without even reading C and D. So never, ever do that. Read everything is really the moral of the story. To me, This is actually a really easy question. The hypothesis was clear. It was easy to understand. It was easy to dumb summarize. And then it was easy to flip around for the weekend. So this is a quote unquote hard question where there's some science and there's some weird relationships, but you got to get something like this right. It doesn't have that craziness to it that a lot of other questions have, especially if you just take a second and use your scratch paper to write down a summary that you can then easily flip when you realize you have to weaken it.